It's spelled traitor, not traitor, by Jagaball Trades. Chapter 11, History.
Do you remember what I said when we first met? You remind me of someone.
Bakugo began before stalling with a sigh.
Well, that someone's been missing for 3 years, and judging by how I just woke you up, you wouldn't know, but he's popping up again. Midoriya Izuku, the next inheritor of All For One.
I know that name, Izuku chipped in, disguised as he was as Zuko. Were you made aware of who I was visited by yesterday?
Some shapeshifter girl.
Yes, she was asking me about someone named Midoriya Izuku. I guess my hunch was right. She was with the Villains Alliance.
Well, great. At least we know you're in the clear from all the crap the teachers have been putting you through.
That may be so, but you're not here to talk about me.
Even though you actually are, I just don't know it.
So please continue.
Right.
Bakugo hesitated, turning his head to stare out of a window.
Might as well just come right out and say it.
The volatile teen shifted back and locked eyes with Izuku.
I think I was the one who pushed Izuku to be a villain.
That was definitely not the conclusion that Izuku had expected Bakugo to come to. I think I'm going to need some context before you can tell me why you believe that.
Bakugo growled out a subvocal curse before inhaling sharply. Alright, so me and Izuku were friends basically before we were born. Our parents knew each other in high school or some crap. We grew up together, and we were basically polar opposites. I was strong, smart, and recklessly confident. Izuku was not. I mean, he was damn smart, but not in the same way I was. I had,
Bakugo twirled his hand in the air, looking for the words he needed.
Instinct. I was just good at stuff. Izuku was book smart. He was good at learning and thinking, planning. But he was tiny and shy.
It sounds like you would have complemented each other's shortcomings.
Yeah, well, 4-year-old me didn't think so. Basically, from day one, I knew I was going to be the best, and everyone told me so. Kids and adults alike. And then I saw little Izuku, who was everything that I wasn't, and nothing like me, so my little cruel child mind connected the dots and decided that if I was the best, then Izuku, who was my opposite, clearly had to be the worst.
Bakugo took a shuddering breath, trying to keep a rein on his emotions.
And I tried to enforce that view of the world on him. I put him down both verbally and physically. I was smart enough to read the letters that made up Izuku's name and realized that it could be read differently as Deku. As I keep beating him down, I took that nonsense word that meant nothing and made it mean useless. Useless fucking Deku.
Izuku winced at the old insult. Children can be cruel.
Oh, I'm nowhere fucking near done.
Bakugo chuckled mirthlessly, a bitter smirk on his face that immediately fell into a scowl.
The one thing me and Izuku had in common was that we both wanted to be heroes. We wanted to be like All Might. But again, for very different reasons. I wanted to be like All Might because he was number one, and he never lost. I felt it was only natural, as the best kid in my class who never lost at anything, that I would be the number one hero.
Bakugo thumbed at his eye.
I never understood why Izuku wanted to be like All Might, until he disappeared. Even though he kept fucking telling me, I just wouldn't listen. He just had this chronic fucking need to help anyone he could.
Like me. Which is what I remind you of Izuku.
Exactly. The only times you saw Izuku come out of his damn shell was to help someone else. If they fell over and skinned their knee. If they needed help studying. If I was pushing them around because as the top dog, the only shitty way I knew how to enforce my superiority was violence.
Bakugo put on a bittersweet smile.
The only time Izuku wasn't fawning over me was when he was telling me off for hurting someone else. But then, when we were 4, my quirk came in. Explosions. Strong and flashy and perfect for the future number one hero. And Izuku was fucking quirkless.
Bakugo spat the word like it was a curse.
As befitting his status as lowest of the low. I had the best quirk, and he had none. And still, he would fucking try to protect everyone else from me one moment like he thought he was worth something, and me tagging along like an adventure through the damn woods like a useless side character the next. It was on one of those treks that I just couldn't stand him anymore. I fell off a log into a creek while leading a bunch of asshole kids beetle hunting. I was fine. All the other bitches knew I was fine. But Izuku was still there holding out his tiny fucking hand, but that damn earnest smile in his eyes asking if I was okay. That this useless kid thought he could try to help me, the best person ever. It pissed me right the fuck off. And so, like any kid does when faced with something he doesn't like, he can't understand, I tried to destroy him.
This is the root that your reasons for believing you pushed Izuku into villainy stem from.
Yeah. Thinking back on it, I could barely blame him. I stopped really bullying other kids, it was just him. Useless fucking Deku that just wouldn't learn his place. I beat that boy black and bloody every damn day and nobody came to save him like he had for them. Ingrates.
Bakugo spat to the side, but his hand darted out on reflex to catch the glob of mucus. He evaporated it with a small explosion and put his arm back on the chair. Izuku wondered who had instilled that bit of reflexive respect for the floor into him.
Even the adults turned their heads, saying that boys will be boys. Like, fuck the entirety of that idea that I was slowly killing this kid day by day and it was just boys being boys. And all the while proclaiming what a great hero I was going to be. So Izuku only really had two hero figures in his life. All Might, the unattainable figurehead of heroes, and me, who beat him up, called him names, destroyed his things, and was all around a bigger fucking villain than anything.
You think you made him disillusioned, did the idea of heroes?
Pretty fucking much. As years went on, he got quieter and quieter, more withdrawn and cynical. Not that it saved him from me. And then one day, poof, he's gone and so was his mom. His dad was a deadbeat and was never around, by the way, so add that to the list. I was the biggest male figure in his life. And you might just love this part. Nobody cared.
Bakugo spread his arms wide, a fake grin on his face and his eyes watering.
A family vanished, and not a single person but me seemed to notice, and here's the best part.
Bakugo put his arms down.
All I saw at the time was that I was out a punching bag. I tried pulling the same shit I did to Izuku on other classmates and got shut down hard. Oh, sure, beat on the quirkless kid who doesn't fight back, that's just fucking boys being boys. But lay a finger on someone with a quirk? That was the first time I began thinking that I might have been wrong. For the first time in my life. Then I got to UA and suddenly I'm not top dog anymore. When I used to coast by on my natural talents, now I was falling behind unless I actually put in the damn effort to keep up. And the worst part is that I think Izuku disappearing was the best thing for me at the time. All that pent-up energy that didn't have an outlet in useless fucking Deku anymore got turned into asserting myself in class. And it worked. Number 2 in both grades and combat now, when I started way down in the double digits. But I wasn't really a part of the class until later, because I was aloof and angry and I snapped at everyone who talked to me. But I still tried to look for Izuku sometimes. And I found that he didn't have a fucking paper trail. No registries, no birth certificates, no records, no enrollments at our shitty public schools, nothing. And then I realized why he had never been declared missing. He didn't fucking exist anymore. That hit the hardest. The closest thing I had to a friend, because let's face it, everyone else associated with me in middle school and earlier was shitty groupies at best and a fucking gang at worst, had vanished off the face of the planet. And as far as anyone was concerned, he was a non-person. I took a good long look at who I was, and I wanted to retroactively fucking beat my own skull in. Do you know what my last words to him were? I told him to go jump off the roof and hope that he had a quirk in the next life. I actually told a living person that they were better off dead.
Bakugo swiped across his eyes with a sleeve, unshed tears pressing into his sleeve.
No fucking wonder he turned out like he did.
Bakugo sniffed, looking down at one of his open palms.
I'm angry, and I'm violent, and I've got a vocabulary made up of permutations of 4-letter words, and that's just who I am. Because for 13 fucking years I was raised to suppress everything else like a good little hero. Can't show weakness to the villains after all. And even though I hated myself for who I was, I couldn't just not be who I had grown into. But I could change, and I have. I'm still irritable. I still like to vent by punching things, but I'll be damned if I'm not a lot nicer than I was. I never had friends. Real, actual friends that liked me for who I am rather than for what I do. Until I came to UA and calmed down.
So, looking back, you recognize things you did that pushed Izuku to be a villain.
Yeah. And in hindsight, I could see the signs that he was taken by villains too. Even before he disappeared. Sometimes I'd catch this look on it in his eye during a quiet moment in class. I didn't know what it was then, but I recognize it now. I play chess with this nerd now, and he gets that look. It means he's planning 10 steps ahead, scheming. They had their damn hooks in him even before he left.
Bakugo began ticking events off on his fingers.
First, the whole hero killer Stain fiasco. It started with a fanatic trying to make himself heard, but suddenly, instead of wanton opportunistic killing, Stain started making attacks with an agenda. Murders with a message, mutilations instead of killings, so the survivors could carry his words. It was all calculated by someone behind the scenes. Then the USJ incident. That handy guy claimed to be the leader of the villains' alliance, but the way that spaz acted and the way the attack was set up were so at odds with each other. It's a wonder we didn't think there was someone else doing the planning at the time. The Hosu incident was as much a declaration of war as it was a carefully planned alpha strike. It's a fucking miracle there haven't been even more casualties. But the biggest thing that should have tipped me off was when I was fucking kidnapped right out of the UA summer camp. Fuckhands Big Mike said he'd heard a lot about me and figured I would be better off as a villain. I told him to piss off and die. A bunch of things happened, and All Might was forced to retire after taking down All for One. But afterwards I thought, why would he think I'd make a villain? In hindsight, the answer is obvious.
Bakugo scoffed.
Izuku had told him all about me and what I did to him.
Bakugo pressed his fists into his eyes and groaned.
And now that he's back, I can't even fucking talk to him. He's basically Japan's most wanted villain, and I'm a hero. I'm pretty much obligated to kick his shit in and arrest him, so I can't really apologize without it sounding completely dishonest. I mean, saying sorry for kicking his ass as a kid, as I am in the process of kicking his ass, or right after I'd beat the shit out of him and locked him in a cell. He'd probably laugh it off as some sort of fucking psychological torture.
That's very insightful. You've clearly been thinking about this a lot.
Yeah,
Bakugo rubbed the back of his head. He looked bashful, of all things.
Sorry to just dump all that on you. Just needed someone to listen to me venting that might get what I'm trying to say.
Izuku leaned forward, hands clasped in his lap. I do see why you believe that you pushed Izuku to become as he has, and I do not deny that you may have had a hand in it, but there is something that perhaps you have not considered.
Pfft, right. Hit me with your miracle insight, Mr. Miracle Worker.
The words coming out of Bakugo's mouth should have sounded sarcastic, but his voice sounded more like a despairing boy making a cry for help. His eyes were wet and shining, looking to Izuku for answers. The look was so foreign on Bakugo's face that it was completely at odds with Izuku's idea of who Bakugo was fundamentally as a person. He just couldn't reconcile old bully Kajan and this new earnest and open Katsuki looking for help. Izuku didn't know what to do. But he wasn't Izuku right now. He was Midoriya Izuku, and there was a person in need of his service. But Zuko didn't like to just give out answers. It was better for Bakugo to come to the conclusions himself, wasn't it? It's like you said. People don't change after 13 years of being the same. Your own account admits that nothing changed you until something outside of your social circle affected your life.
You think someone else was involved?
I do. Can you think back? Maybe recall Izuku's circumstances outside of your interactions with him? Bakugo clenched his eyes shut and pinched his bottom lip between his fingers. Izuku's heart skipped a beat when he recognized his own habit in his childhood friend.
Yeah. My mom once said that Izuku was seeing a tutor. I think she heard from Auntie Midoriya. Ugh, fuck.
Bakugo buried his face in his hands and rocked it side to side.
I called her auntie even while I was ruining her son's life. What an asshole.
He was silent, but for a few hitching breaths behind his hands before he looked back up.
Miss Midoriya had told my mom that a tutor had reached out to her with a program designed to teach quirkless kids the skills they needed to survive in a world full of quirks.
Izuku snapped his fingers and pointed them at Bakugo. There! Say, have you wondered why the sign on my shop says Quirkless Welcome, even though I run a quirk counseling business?
Because
Bakugo blinked at the change of subject.
You want to help everyone you can?
Exactly. And when I was setting up my business and looking for gaps in the market, do you know what I found? Izuku planted a fist on his knee. There are no programs for quirkless kids. Not a one. Never have been. Not from private companies, and certainly not from the government. So I wanted to help these people who no one else will.
Wait. So if there's no quirkless support programs, then what the hell was Izuku's tutor?
Possibly the only outside influence that little Izuku had from the insular world established for him.
And he was the one who turned Izuku to the villains, using me as a reason why heroes weren't worth the trouble.
Realization dawned on Bakugo's face. He may very well have used your behavior as a point of leverage, yes.
And as soon as I took that last step over the line, he turned to his tutor, who had been poisoning him over years of lessons against society, and went with him into the darkness.
That's my theory. It is possible that, had Izuku not been visited by this tutor, he would have stayed the naive, hopeful hero all his life until something else convinced him otherwise. Bakugo looked askance at Izuku before bursting into laughter, pounding his fist on the back of the chair he was straddling.
What? Oh man, Shay, you don't know what kind of weight just lifted off my chest. Man, I could kiss you right now, but your breath probably tastes like ass.
What? Bakugo leaned back, a serene smile on his face. For once his brow was uncreased, his eyes relaxed.
You really do work miracles. Fuck when we take that asshole Izuku and we should send you to work at his problems. You'll have him reformed in a week. Taps.
Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to be a criminal therapist, Izuku muttered, despite being exactly that among the villains' alliance. Though it would have been hilarious to play therapist for himself, through a clone, if devilishly difficult, even if he could hold the Zuko clone together during the final fight. Maybe the handicap would be worth the investment now that Izuku thought on it.
You'll be fine. Now I should let you get back to sleep. Gonna be a big couple of days coming up.
Bakugo reached over to clap Izuku on the shoulder before he stood, stretching. Izuku turned to look at the digital alarm clock on the bedside table for the first time. It was already after 4 in the morning. Ah, yes, and that might be good. Have a good night, Bakugo. I'm glad you were comfortable enough to work through this issue with me.
Yeah, whatever.
Bakugo sauntered to Izuku's door and opened it, only to find a gang of 1A students crowded around the opening. Well, he looked at them, and they looked at him, and he looked at them, and they looked at him, and he looked at them, and they looked at him. A blonde-haired boy with a zigzag black mark on his bangs piped up from the back. So, when are you gonna ask him on a date? Bakugo very calmly pulled the door shut behind him before the hallway erupted into shouts, explosions, and what Izuku could only imagine was a very cartoonesque cloud of violence. All these UA kids are some of the most dysfunctional people I've ever seen, Izuku muttered to himself before rolling over on the bed and let the sounds of violence fade into the background.